Watch right now on the Front News Project. The Ukrainian armed forces are striking at Kadyrov's lair up to Dondan's residence. 800 meters. You have to see this. Pokrovsk urgently. The Ukrainian armed forces avoided encirclement. Exclusive footage of Hellish battles. Putin also wants to produce suicide bombers in India. The Ukrainian armed forces are ready to destroy enemy hardware with new missiles. Fiery, hot, and blazing footage from the front line. Watch this right now, this moment. Greetings, this is Vladimir Timoshenko with you, and we're starting right away with the most important news. Ukrainian drones have struck Ramzan Kadyrov's den. The blow was taken by Grozny city. It houses the so-called Security Council of Chechnya and other regional administrations of the Republic. It's amusing that this happened after the dying Dondon promised to bring Europe to its knees. How are Ukrainian birds taking their revenge? We'll tell and show you more in a moment. In
recent months, Chechnya has become an epicenter of tension amid increased intensity of attacks by Ukrainian drones. Airports in the North Caucasus suspended operations. A UAV strike was recorded near the skyscraper in Grozny city on Kadyrov Avenue. One of the high-rises sustained damage. The video shows that at least 10 floors were affected. A day before that, Kadyrov declared that he was ready to go to war with Europe at any moment and promised to force it to apologize.
We definitely won't stand on ceremony, Vladimir Vladimirovich. We're waiting for the order. It will all end very quickly, and clearly not in favor of those who decided to start a war with Russia. I have one question. Vladimir Vladimirovich, if all this starts, you won't be upset with us if they immediately start apologizing voluntarily, will you?
Notably, the high-rise district is located just 800 meters from Kadyrov's residence. His administration was seriously frightened because Dondon might not have survived this strike, given his serious health problems.
Grozny and Grozny city are symbols of the Kadyrov regime, and as I understand it, the main achievement of the Kadyrov regime.
Several government offices are located in the affected buildings of Grozny city, the authorities of Chechnya.
In particular, according to mapping services, the building houses the Chechen Ministry of Tourism, the Regional Department for Relations with Religious and Public Organizations, the Regional Office of the Ministry of Justice, the Chechen Security Council, the Republic's Audit Chamber, the local Ombudsman's Reception Office, the United Russia Party's Reception Office, and the Regional Election Commission.
The main target of the attack may have been the FSB building located nearby, but Russian electronic warfare made its own adjustments.
This is not a strike against the civilian population. This is a strike against government authorities. Absolutely legitimate, absolutely legal.
This is already the second strike on the region this week. Earlier, UAVs hit the FSB building in Ashkoy Martin and the district police department in Gudurmes. Chechnya had not been subjected to attacks by the Ukrainian armed forces since December of last year. At that time, the barracks of the Russian National Guard came under attack.
These are simply direct strikes against the Chechen security forces who are actively involved, often act as a coercive force against Russians themselves to make them fight. And in order to significantly distract them, we strike at them.
Ukrainian defenders continue to fight the occupiers, destroying their weapons behind enemy lines. This time, as preparations were underway to launch Shaheds from Milerovo in the Rostov region, several Ukrainian drones struck the UAV launch platforms.
This was one of 6 locations from which the Shaheds were being launched. Milerovo remains a major hub, a large base for storing Shaheds and launching strikes to Panama. Now, these sites have become permanent bases, and from some of them, it's possible to launch around 100 Shaheds in a single night. That's a lot.
Milerovo is an important road and rail junction. From Milerovo to the line of contact is more than 150 kilometers. From here, Russia launches Shaheds at Ukraine almost every night. She'll definitely be right there. Hello, look closely. Something small and white is gracefully flying. There it truly is. Oh, Mama! After successful attacks by Ukrainian defenders on Russian airfields, this year new air defense positions appeared at the Milerovo airbase, which were not there in 2024. Hangars were built on the sites of open aircraft parking areas.
Naturally, we are paying special attention to this facility, which is a major base for Shaheds. Shaheds have now become one of the three main means of striking us. These are Shaheds, these are glide bombs, and these are ballistic missiles. These three components, if we learn how to fight them and counter them, life will become much better for us.
Foreign agencies are reporting a record intensity of drone attacks on Russian regions. In November, the number of drones launched from Ukraine increased. This is also confirmed by official data from the Russian Ministry of Defense. Ukraine, meanwhile, continues to fight against the occupiers.
Well then, now for an analysis of the operational situation on the much-suffering Pokrovsk front. Fierce battles continue. On the Pokrovsk front, since the beginning of the day, Russian occupiers have made 25 attempts to push our soldiers from their positions. In the areas of the settlements of Shakova, Fedorivka, Rodinske, Chervony Lyman and Mirnohrad, Pokrovsk, Kotlina, Udakhna, Molodetska, Dakhna and towards Novopavlivka. The defense forces are holding back the onslaught and have already repelled 22 attacks. Meanwhile, the Russian command in the Pokrovsk direction is concealing the real combat losses by registering fallen soldiers as having deserted their units. This was reported by the ATO partisan movement, citing their agents inside the 30th Motorized Rifle Brigade of the Russian Armed Forces. The soldiers are openly told that a fallen comrade will be registered as having voluntarily left the unit. It's easier, much easier, than explaining to the relatives where the body of the deceased is. All the details of what is happening on the line of combat engagement are coming up next in our military review. Along
The front line stretching for more than over 710,000 Russian occupiers are deployed along 1,250 kilometers of the front. Despite the enemy army's impressive numbers, Ukraine's defense forces have advanced in 4 directions, while the Russians have only advanced in 1.
Putin has repeatedly claimed that these places have been captured. Pokrovsk, Mirnohrad, Kostiantynivka, Kupiansk, especially there, they raised their flags several times. And it was Putin himself who said, not just reported to him, but he himself stated that the city was captured just like Vovchansk. In other words, he needs to demonstrate the actual seizure of territory and show us that offensive operations will continue. And if we don't meet his demands, especially if we don't give up Donetsk region completely, he will continue to develop offensive operations in the winter, increasing pressure on the front and, so to speak, on the rear, on ordinary civilians, on the energy sector, so that people freeze in winter to sow panic and doubt. And in these few months, he will actively try to achieve his goals in terms of the first stage, a ceasefire on his terms and the signing of peace, and then preparing for possible new operations.
The Russians struck the dam of the Pechenihi Reservoir in the Kharkiv region. Traffic on the road surface has been halted. The American Institute for the Study of War does not confirm the Russians' claims of success in the southern part of Vovchansk and in the Kupiansk district. From
the Vovchansk direction, we are on the line. Here it is, my Nile.
one Russian war correspondent claimed that their troops advanced in the southern part of Vovchansk, while another said that the Russians captured the village of Lyman and control 80% of Vovchansk. The occupiers are using the tactic of shading in areas they allegedly captured. In many cases, fighting is still ongoing in these territories. It's too early to talk about capture.
Data centers from the Creamy Whim project recorded that the events are taking place 500 meters into the territory that they themselves had previously shaded as being under Russian control. In general, there are the most questions about the shading done by this particular project. For them, literally, the defeat of a lone Russian soldier by an FPV drone is a reason to shade in a couple of kilometers up to the place where it happened. But overall, it's important to remember that control in today's reality is a very relative concept. especially in cities, because while infiltration across open terrain is at least somewhat difficult, city blocks where it's easy to hide from drones are basically wide open. So for now, all we can really say is that fighting is taking place in the area that was previously shaded as Russian, which in itself is already a good sign.
Russian forces continued combat operations in the Zaporizhzhia region. In particular, the occupiers attacked near Huliaipol and Orikhiv. However, there are no confirmed changes to the front line.
The level of activity is unlikely to decrease today. Our assault unit is also operating here. You know that the Russians periodically spread, including fake reports, claiming that they have advanced somewhere. Obviously, these fake reports are primarily aimed at Ukrainian society in order to create a certain emotional atmosphere.
On November 21st, propaganda channels released a video showing soldiers holding the Russian Federation flag in the Alexandrovsk direction. And they claim to have occupied Tike and Otradna. Ukrainian soldiers liberated the village of Tike in the Sinelnikova district of Dnipropetrovsk region from the occupiers. There are videos confirming this. Ukrainian warriors continue to defend Pokrovsk and Myrnorod. In a video published on December 6th, 3 Ukrainian soldiers raised the flag on Yakub Kolas Lane in the northern part of the city, which indicates that they are holding their positions. The commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine called this stage of the defense extremely difficult.
Our strategy is to exhaust the Russian army as much as possible, prevent its advance, hold our territory, while simultaneously striking the enemy in the rear, in operational depth, and on Russian territory itself, with the goal of undermining its defensive potential and industrial capabilities.
General Oleksandr Syrsky also stated in an interview that Ukrainian forces will maintain their positions in the north of Pokrovsk.
The Ukrainian army is conducting a strategic defensive operation aimed at containing the enemy's advance, preventing their breakthrough deeper into our territory, inflicting maximum losses, and carrying out counter-offensive actions in those sectors where we see the enemy's vulnerabilities. At the
same time, the Russians have managed to significantly complicate Ukrainian logistics in the Pokrovsk direction. The occupiers' goal is to completely cut off Ukrainian supply and evacuation routes. However, they have not yet succeeded in encircling the Ukrainian garrisons in either city. This is also confirmed by the American Institute for the Study of War.
Ukrainian forces are maintaining limited logistics in the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad direction. However, Russian troops are very likely able to disrupt Ukrainian evacuation routes and ground lines of communication using artillery and drones.
The defense forces are trying to organize additional logistical routes to supply their units. Throughout the week, the main direction was the north of Donetsk region. It was to that area that the Russians were transferring manpower. The transfers were carried out in convoys accompanied by military police.
The dominant direction this week was the north of Donetsk region. From the Berdyansk direction through the city of Mariupol towards Volnovakha, between 10 and 20 trucks were observed daily, mostly carrying personnel and without tactical markings. This indicates new units after training and matches the training schedule.
Despite heavy losses, the pace of the Russian Federation's offensive is increasing. At the same time, Russia continues to intensify strikes on Ukrainian cities.
And now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Kostiantynivka sector of the front. Putin's army, and here they're up to their usual tricks. On the Kostiantynivka direction, the enemy tried 15 times to break through our defenses. Near Oleksandr Shultin, Pleshchivka, Shcherbinivka, Yablonivka, Rusin Yar, and towards Sofiyivka. Yes, this winter will be extremely difficult. The enemy is destroying Ukraine's energy infrastructure to deprive Ukrainians of electricity and sow despair, a sense of hopelessness. But here's some bad news for the Kremlin cannibals. F-16 fighter jets now in service with Ukraine have likely started shooting down Russian Shaheds using inexpensive and effective missiles. Which missiles are we talking about? Let's explain.
Every day, Ukraine is under massive attack from Russian UAVs. Drones are being launched at both critical infrastructure and civilian targets. But Ukraine now possesses the most effective and optimal way to counter aggressive Russian attacks. F-16 fighter jets have started shooting down Shaheds using APKW-S2 missiles with laser guidance.
They can practically, let's say, operate at the moment of so-called swarm deployment, meaning one aircraft illuminates the target and a strike is delivered, laser target designation, and accordingly a second aircraft can engage the target. This is quite remarkable, especially considering that the Russians have started using the principle of swarm drone launches, that is, several dozen at once and in multiple waves.
Previously, the effectiveness of missiles against drones had already been proven in Ukraine, but when launched from ground-based systems. Now, however, the system works in the air as well.
Moreover, the Russians note their high effectiveness. This concerns not only the destruction of Garand 2 and Garand 3 drones with jet engines, but primarily reconnaissance drones. This was the main threat to the Ukrainian defense forces. Reconnaissance drones operated outside the range of air defense systems, flying at altitudes from 5,000 meters, and thus posed a serious problem for the Ukrainian side.
The main advantage of these missiles is their price. Previously, to shoot down a single drone, they used missiles costing $1 million. Now the effectiveness is the same, but the price is several times lower.
Let me remind you that this is a missile for a short and medium-range surface-to-air missile system. The cost is about $100,000. Missiles for Patriot air defense systems cost about $1.5 million. These particular missiles, specifically their remarkable ability to be used primarily and most effectively against various types of attack drones and reconnaissance drones, that's indeed the main and most crucial point. This significant advantage makes it entirely possible to substantially reduce operational costs while simultaneously maintaining a highly effective and robust air defense system.
Previously, it was believed that Ukrainian F-16S would receive such weapons, but that won't happen anytime soon. However, unexpectedly, one of the partners provided Ukraine with special equipment that allows the use of such missiles.
This is an American development, accordingly. Either the American side or European partners with the permission of the American side. The very fact of transferring these strike assets already scientifically disproves it. The fact that the American side has suspended the expanded nature of military technical assistance to Ukraine. In other words, this is an element of military political pressure on the Russian side. And note that the transfer of American strike assets coincides with the intensification of the negotiation process.
The main question is whether this will change the situation in the skies, since drones remain one of Russia's main tools of pressure. They are launched in series, in waves, trying to overload air defenses.
Not a single air defense system provides a 100% guarantee. Yes, this will significantly strengthen the Ukrainian side's position in terms of defense. First and foremost, the protection of key energy and logistics facilities. But to say that this is an absolute panacea would not be accurate. It is just one component of the air defense system.
The new equipment has significantly strengthened Ukraine's air forces. Now it is possible to shoot down enemy drones more effectively without using expensive missiles for this purpose. And this is especially important now, when Shaheds threaten the Ukrainian skies every day.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
And now, unique footage from the Ukrainian military industry. The company Firepoint has showcased its new facilities. Let me remind you, this is the very company that managed to develop the Flamingo missiles with a range of up to 3,000 kilometers in record time, and also opened its own production facility in a NATO country. So what new products do they have this time? And why will the Kremlin definitely be afraid of them? You'll see in a moment.
A Ukrainian defense technology company is changing the course of the war. For the first time, Firepoint has shown unique footage of its drone and missile production. Over the past year, the company has achieved impressive results both in manufacturing and in the effectiveness of its products. These drones are 3 times cheaper than their competitors on the market, drones that are used for medium-range strikes. According to published statistics, Firepoint's combat systems are leading in the use of heavy combat drones. More than half of all uses of long-range drones with a warhead over 30 kilograms are Firepoint systems. Firepoint drones have distinguished themselves by striking critically important enemy targets, including ammunition depots and arsenals in Toropets and Tikhoretsk. Several airfields, Taganrog, Marinovka, Engels 2, Shaikovka airbase facilities, S-400 air defense system positions, as well as, for example, in Solntsevka, Donetsk region, the command post of the 90th Tank Division of the Russian Federation. From time to time, there are even some truly exclusive catches, like military helicopters. The activities of the Ukrainian company Firepoint are aimed at providing Ukraine with the capability to deliver just retaliatory strikes on Russian territory.
Back when all of this was starting, when people said we were fighting with one hand tied behind our back, I tend to agree with your opinion that this is the right interpretation of what was happening then. But now we have our own production, and it is precisely our domestic production that has given us the ability to use our forces and resources in the way we ourselves see fit.
The Kremlin understands only the language of force. The best argument in any negotiations with Moscow is a powerful Ukrainian army. And the military-industrial complex, in particular, our own production of long-range drones and missiles with which Ukraine can regularly strike targets in Russia located thousands of kilometers or more from the front line.
In order to somehow bring this war to a stalemate, to shift it, we need to learn not only to repel enemy attacks on the front line, but also to suppress their logistics and their air force. And I'm not even mentioning the fact that it's necessary to strike at Russia's military-industrial enterprises and its energy system.
For dessert, Ukrainian engineers have prepared the Flamingo cruise missile for the Russian occupiers. The Ukrainian Pink Bird not only boasts an impressive range of 3,000 kilometers, but also a warhead weighing over 1,000 kilograms.
Usually the warhead of a modern cruise missile is 450, at most 500 kilograms. As a rule, almost all missiles have a 450 kilogram warhead. What does a one-ton warhead provide? When it hits a target, for example, an industrial facility, 2 such missiles can completely disable it for at least a year. That is, there will be a single crater about 20 meters in diameter.
Russian terrorists who shell Ukrainian cities must realize a mirrored strike is coming. It will definitely happen.
And now, an analysis of the situation on the Alexandrovsk front. The enemy is active here as well. On the Alexandrovsk front, Ukrainian defenders have repelled 11 enemy assault actions. The enemy is trying to advance in the areas of the settlements of Zeleny Gai, Snezhnoye, Verbovoye, Rybnoye, Krasnogorskoye, and Vishnevoye. Another battle is still ongoing. And here's another story that, at first glance, seems almost comical. A manufacturer of enameled cookware from Gomel, Belarus, is helping the occupiers organize drone safaris against Ukrainians. According to investigative journalists, the Belarusian plant Santex is helping Russia's largest UAV manufacturer, Rustakt, evade sanctions. Rustakt supplies the Rubicon Unmanned Aerial Vehicle Technology Center. Moreover, there is a suspicion that instead of dishes, Belarusians collect kamikaze drones. Don't believe it? Watch our next report and draw your own conclusions.
Pots, trays, garbage containers, and wheel stop systems. These are the products from the Gomel plant Santex that you can see on display. But under the table, the Belarusians are also trading drones, and quite successfully at that. The underground production at Santex was exposed in June of this year. Amid the posts about kitchenware, this one appeared about a quadcopter with a thermal imaging camera called Pioneer. The publication has now been removed from the website, but it was thanks to it that journalists were able to unravel the thread that led to the most powerful secret drone technology center in the Russian army, Rubicon.
Wherever they are stationed, wherever they operate, I don't envy our units.
The main combat drone of Rubicon is the VT-40 Kamikaze UAV, also known as Pseudoplatov. This is the most widely produced drone manufactured by the Russian company Rustakt as part of the Judgment Day project. Currently, the manufacturer is under sanctions from Switzerland and the European Union. A few months before being added to the blacklist, Rustakt was headed by Pavel Nikitin from Belarus. He moved to Russia in the 2000s and now owns several companies that fulfill orders for law enforcement agencies as well as the Russian defense industry. But as journalists have found out, Nikitin has not severed ties with his homeland, even though he renounced his Belarusian citizenship in 2010.
Together with his relatives, he owns or manages at least 4 companies there. One of them is the Santex plant, Ezat. Through his Belarusian company, Nikitin supplies Rustak with Western components from the Czech Republic, Italy, Poland, and the USA. Moreover, these deliveries continued after the sanctions were imposed.
In the hands of journalists, there were also documents regarding shipments of goods that were not described in any way. By the way, similar invoices with completely undescribed goods were sent to the Russian Rustak from China as well, amounting to millions of dollars.
The same kind of undescribed equipment is also supplied to Rustakt by the Gomel-based cookware manufacturer, the Santex plant. In documents from a source in the tax service, we found 135 payments totaling more than 14 billion Russian rubles. That's over $152 million. BRC has not yet been able to determine exactly what kind of equipment it is. The Santex plant sells to Rustak. But
journalists have confirmed deliveries of drones from the world-famous company DJI, which are banned for sale in Russia. According to their data, the Belarusian factory, which officially displays pots and basins in its store windows, re-exported DJI drones worth $2 million to Russia from 2022 to 2023. In total, according to calculations by the Belarusian Investigative Center, 14 Belarusian companies are helping Russians kill Ukrainians and organize safaris to hunt them. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, they have supplied 20,000 drones worth $34 million. And naturally, these figures are far from reflecting the true scale of assistance to Russia's military aggression. And now,
an analysis of the current operational situation on the Lyman front. The enemy army's bloody rampage continues, and here. On the Lyman front, the invading army carried out 7 attacks on Ukrainian positions. In the areas of the settlements of Novovodyan, Shandrihalov, Kolodyazy, Drobyshev, and towards Lyman. Currently, one battle is still ongoing. The Kremlin is threatening to assemble combat drones together with India and immediately use them to strike Ukraine. In exchange for cooperating with the bunker dweller, Moscow is offering a generous bonus, the transfer of technology and combat experience. A delegation from the Smolensk FPV drone piloting center even flew to India with Putin to set up production. For more details on the prospects of cooperation between the Kremlin and New Delhi, watch our report.
Good afternoon.
The Russian Federation is becoming increasingly dependent on India. Modi and Putin have decided to go into business together. I know
that in India they say, we will go together, we will grow together.
Russia is actively expanding cooperation and seeking to establish joint drone production. This is stated in a new report by the American Institute for the Study of War.
The Kremlin is considering expanding joint weapons production in India to include drones, which Russia will very likely use on the battlefield. In Ukraine, possibly in exchange for Russian technological innovations and lessons learned in Ukraine.
This was also confirmed by Sergei Chemezov, head of the Russian state corporation Rostec.
We have made proposals, we have sent our suggestions. Pasu 57. Russia is also ready to offer localization of production. They said, we'll think about it.
Moscow is negotiating with Delhi on localizing the production of Russian drones, including strike Lancets, on Indian territory.
Guys, let's not talk about this.
The day before, in an interview with India Today, Putin emphasized that Russia is closely cooperating with India. It not only supplies weapons to the east, but also transfers technologies for the shipbuilding, missile, and aviation industries. According to analysts from the Institute for the Study of War, such statements indicate the Kremlin's intention to deepen military technical cooperation with India, possibly up to and including joint production of strike drones. Thanks to its ally, the Kremlin is likely counting on using these drones in the war against Ukraine in exchange for transferring them to India, new technologies and combat experience.
I want it to be absolutely clear and unequivocally stated. The Russian delegation came not only to extensively discuss crucial energy issues, not only to meticulously place significant orders and formally sign comprehensive contracts for the reliable supply of essential oil or natural gas. We want to develop multifaceted relations with India.
The visit of the Smolensk FPV drone piloting center delegation to India put all the dots on the I. It was announced as fulfilling tasks within the framework of the Russian-Indian strategic partnership.
We greatly value India's position on many issues. India is the only country with which, by the way, we have never been at war and with which we have no mutual claims. And we are truly grateful to the Indian side for always consistently responding to our sincere invitations, diligently coming to our joint exercises, and warmly inviting us in return as well.
At the same time, Russia is trying to attract as much Indian labor to the country as possible. Deputy Prime Minister Denis Manturov stated that Moscow is ready to accept an unlimited number of migrants from India. It turns out that because Putin sent a significant portion of the population to war, a part of the population, now Russian industry is short 1.5 million people in trade, construction, and the service sector. The manufacturing industry needs additional workers on top of those already employed. The economy needs people.
And as for example, trade, I am writing as someone more or less close to the Kremlin. On top of that, there's retail, construction.
I think we have a more or less limited number. There definitely are jobs available.
In addition, the Kremlin-appointed head of the occupation administration of the Kherson region, Saldo, stated that he too discussed cooperation opportunities with Indian representatives.
Businessmen from India, Iran, Nicaragua, and France have shown interest. This is a sign of trust in our land, in its future, and in the determination of the people to build a new, prosperous Kherson region.
Cooperation with Russia is already causing India significant economic losses. Due to purchases of Russian oil and weapons, the US in 2025 raised tariffs on most Indian goods to 50%, including additional duties related to energy trade. This hit Indian manufacturers focused on the American market. And after the latest meeting between Modi and Putin, the Indian rupee fell to a record low.
They say that in the past, a yogi could go a year without putting anything in his mouth, but now they're breaking records by eating everything.
India is wary of sanctions, so it intends to reduce imports of Russian oil to the lowest level in 3 years. The largest Indian energy company has already completely stopped purchases, switching to raw materials from Middle Eastern countries and the US.
This is an important event because we have known each other for 25 years.
The media reported that during Putin's visit to Delhi, he planned to discuss the purchase of Russian fighter jets and air defense systems. India also agreed to lease a Russian nuclear attack submarine for 10 years, at a cost of $2 billion. That's all for today.
But very soon on Front News, there will be new, unique reports from our journalists brought to you from the hottest spots of the war so that you know the truth. This was Vladimir Timoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.